Hey y'all, it's Kathy Bohannon, your independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and I'm sharing this card with you tonight. This is a pocket card, and it's a guide card. It's got a nautical theme to it, very vintagey looking. I love the old world map, and there's a couple of techniques here I want to share with you. First is how to make this actual card, the pocket part, and another is how to distress the edges and how to make this map look really, really old. And I don't know if you can see the heat embossing that makes this shiny. So I will show you all of these things right quick. Okay, first of all, we're going to start with an 8.5 by 11 sheet of cardstock, and we're going to cut it at 5.5. And we're going to score it at 5.25. Now on my Stampin' Trimmer, I have a scoring blade and I have a cutting blade. So the cutting blade is the darker one and the scoring blade is this lighter taupe color. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that little score mark in there, but we're going to fold on the score line. Okay, so that gives you that pocket right there. Okay, so now you know how to make the pocket part of the card. For the distressing, we're going to use Typeset Specialty Designer Series paper. I love this paper. It is thin, and it's very elegant. It's very vintagey looking. You get several sheets of each design. I think it's probably 4 sheets of each design. I love this for guy card. Anything steampunk or vintage. Love this paper. Okay, so what I did to get this effect, as well as this distressed aged look around each of the little bookmarks, I just sponged around the edges, and I'll show you using soft suede. You're going to just kind of just go like this around the edges and see how that makes it look old and like it was found somewhere. Now, to get the map look where it looks like it's been all crinkled, honestly, you just crinkle it. Isn't that fun? There's some pretty good crinkles in it, not too many. You kind of just want some sharp folds, and you're going to come in and go like this. So this is a good example where there's not a lot of design on here. So you see how that looks. And when you go to glue it down, you just smooth it out, and it keeps these marks in the paper. Like this. Okay, my preferred glue for this particular paper onto the cardstock is the Tombow Mono Liquid Glue. This is just great glue, and it allows you a moment to kind of scooch things around. And for my tags, what I used there was this tag punch. Now, most punches we're going to punch this way. This particular one, we're going to cut 2-inch strips. Push it all the way up in here. You see where that goes? And this is exactly 2 inches. And when you pull it out, you've got your tag. And this, of course, is just some of that Designer Series paper cut in strips, looped over, and glued down. That's all that is. Now, for the stamping here, what I did, okay, I inked up my stamp. I stamped onto my scrap paper, and then I stamped on my cardstock. Okay, so now we'll make this right here. If you can see the little shiny heat embossed design. I have the stamp, and I've mounted it on my block. And I'm going to use Versamark. It's a watermark stamp pad that you can use to just create a watermark, or you can use it as a base for your heat embossing powder. Now, before we stamp that, we want to use an embossing buddy, which is this little guy. I've always kept it in this bag because it's got powder in it. And basically what this does is it just keeps the static from being on your card. it's a big deal. You need to use this or something like it to keep the static off, because the static will actually make your particles cling, and then when you melt them down and they dry, it doesn't look right. So I'm using my Stampin' Pierce mat that I keep just for my photopolymer stamps. This is a photopolymer stamp, and I've already used my embossing buddy on here, so there should not be any static. And I'm pressing this one a little bit harder than I normally would because it's Versamark, and I just don't want anything to not transfer from the stamp. This is a Stampin' Emboss powder. This is early espresso, and we have it in many colors. It's by far one of my favorite techniques because you turn it into something wonderful. Now I'm going to use my heat tool, and basically I'll explain it and then I'll speed it up. All you do, you just get heat on this. As you see, I've already made one side. Use the heat tool to melt this down, and that creates your image. There we go. Now I do keep a little paintbrush around just in case I need to knock off a few pieces, but this one looks good, so I'm not going to need to do that. Okay, I don't want the heat too close to my hands. This is the heat embossing tool. You just turn it on here. Can you see how shiny it is? Okay, so now you know how to do this. You know how to distress your paper. You know how to kind of give everything an antique finish. For this particular card, I used 3 different stamp sets. I used Trust God, I used C Street, and I used Adventure Awaits. You don't need to have 3 different stamp sets. I just picked those out, and you can just combine whatever images you like to create something similar. If you do want to make this exact card, you would need all of these stamp sets. And I also used the Starburst framelit dies, those, with my Big Shot, and I'll do a video on that later. I used my Tombow multi-liquid glue. I used Stampin' Dimensionals, the Embossing Buddy, Versamark, Soft Suede, this Tag Punch, Early Espresso, and I used the Stampin' Up! Linen thread for this. So that's our card today. I hope you enjoyed it. Y'all have a blessed day. Bye now.